Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started. I am beyond amazed by this crowd, and I might start getting teary because I love Vegas. So let me just start with that. I am the editor of El Palacio, and I also grew up here in Las Vegas. So this is my hometown, and this amount of people is incredible. And it's just like it means so much, and it means so much to them too, I'm sure. And we're all three of us Highlands alumni. So I'm the editor of El Palacio magazine. For anyone who doesn't know, it was founded in 1913, a year after the state of New Mexico became an official state. And I have some copies of the magazine back here on this tiny table. You can take them. The one that has this cover has the article that Myrriah Gómez wrote about the Chicano movement that we're going to be talking about today. And then I also brought, and there are fewer copies of them, but I also brought two other issues with Las Vegas essays in them. This one from the summer has an essay in it from Simon Romero, who writes for the New York Times, and he has an essay in here about his mom, Janet Stein Romero, who was my high school art teacher and was a beloved figure in Las Vegas. And then this one is from last summer, and it has an essay in it by a woman who grew up in the Enchanted Hills trailer park. And she writes about her prom experience at Robertson in 1983, and there's some fabulous photos of prom in 1981, I think, with like top hats and canes and all kinds of stuff. So there are a few each of these ones and a lot more of this current one about the Chicano movement.
Emily, did you tell us your name? Emily, did you tell us your name?
My name. Did I neglect my name? I'm Emily Withnall. Sorry, thank you. I was just so excited to see so many people here. And please also, there's some, there's a sign-up sheet for a new newsletter we're going to start at El Palacio, so you can find out about more events like this. I also host the affiliated podcast Encounter Culture, where I talk about all kinds of things, art and culture related to, history related to New Mexico. El Palacio in 1913 started as an archaeology pamphlet, basically. It was covering archaeological digs in the Southwest and Central America. It has evolved a lot over the past 113 years, and every editor has brought kind of their own perspective. The thing that I'm really dedicated to, especially being from Las Vegas, is finding the histories that aren't talked about as much. And so that's a lot of what you'll find in these pages. If you're interested in that stuff, I would highly recommend subscribing. It's very cheap. It's like $8 an issue, and it's a quarterly magazine, so it comes out 4 times a year. So I think that's everything El Palacio related. Please sign up for the newsletter. It's on that table back there with the magazines. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcast app. And after this, Myrriah will say more about this, but because there's so many people here, and probably a lot of you want to share your stories from this time of El Movimiento in Las Vegas, we have a recording room set up here with some of the media arts students who are going to be collecting oral histories. Wow. So, okay, so I'm gonna get to their bios so they can start, and you can hear the actual thing you're here for. Okay, so Myrriah Gómez is an associate professor in the Honors College at the University of New Mexico and the author of Nuclear Nuevo Mexico, Colonialism and the Effects of the Nuclear Industrial Complex on Nuevo Mexicanos. Also, we had a class together at Highlands in the early 2000s. And then Adelita Michelle Medina is a multimedia artist, social justice and peace activist, and a freelance writer. She holds an MS in journalism from Columbia University and a BA in art and English from New Mexico Highlands University. Medina grew up in Ranchitos, New Mexico, and moved to New York City in 1975, where she studied and worked for several nonprofit and civil rights organizations for 25 years. She returned to New Mexico in 2004 and now resides in Albuquerque. A dozen of her black and white photographs and several paintings and collages were part of the recent Voces del Pueblo, Artists of the Levantamiento Chicano in New Mexico exhibition at the National Hispanic Cultural Center.
Yeah, like Emily, I'm just floored how many people are here. It's so nice to see people I've known since college. I worked here at Donnelly Library downstairs in government documents. And so the library, Donnelly, is like a second home for me. There's so much I want to say, but for starters, gracias por venir. I think that we knew that people would show up for this, and I don't know, I guess we didn't expect so many people would show up. This is wonderful. And I'm so glad because of this, we had that foresight, like Emily mentioned, to set up the recording booth. And those guys will be here for a few hours. What we're going to do is we're going to save all those and we're going to archive them probably here at Highlands. That hasn't been talked about fully, but hey, sometimes you do think ahead. So there's a lot I want to say. There's a lot Adelita has to say. Today is really not about what I have to say, even though I wrote the article. It's really to let Adelita have some time to talk about her photos that were in the exhibit. Yes. I know Nacho Jaramillo's here. He was another Ignacio Nacho Jaramillo. Nacho, raise your hand. Where are you sitting? In the back. He's standing. And so when Emily approached me and asked me if I would be interested in writing this article about the exhibit that was at the National Hispanic Cultural Center, the first thing I did was contact several people, Adelita included, to see if she would just sit down and chat with me. And what developed in that conversation turned into this story with focus on the escuelita that Adelita and David Montoya. David, raise your hand. We're running in Montezuma at the castle, and so I only want to read the first two paragraphs of the story. You can read it online, like Emily said. There's some copies here, but I'll just read it and then I'll go from there. If you are walking on the New Mexico Highlands University campus in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and you find yourself on the south side of Hippie Hill, and you know where to look, you can see the phrase "Viva la Raza" scratched into the sidewalk. You can see it best during golden hour when the sun starts to set across the plains of Nuestra Señora de los Dolores de Las Vegas Grandes. And if you stand outside of Professor Eric Romero's office, you can see a poster for the first meeting of the National Caucus of Chicano Social Scientists in 1973, the organization that would later become the National Association for Chicana and Chicano Studies, or NOX. As a 20-year-old Chicanita, I sought out that history when I was a student at Highlands. I sought it out in classes like Chicano Literature with Professor Daniel Martinez and Poesía Chicana with Professor Lillian Gorman. When Highlands saw a mini resurgence of the Chicano activism of the 1970s, during the early 2000s, the old-timers told us about the murals that activists had painted on campus during the Chicano movement. But that story had been covered up as part of the larger whitewashing, both literal and figurative, of student activism at Highlands. So I want to acknowledge a few people before we get started with this Plática. I want to acknowledge first my colleagues Ray Hernandez Duran and Irene Vasquez, who were the curators of this exhibit at the National Hispanic Cultural Center. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Eric Romero. Eric. And Dr. Hilario Romero. Hilario, raise your hand. Because without folks like these two, mocositas like me could have never done these things. So Eric was the first professor I ever met when I was a 16-year-old high school student, and I was involved. We were going to Nebraska. Where were we? California. And I was involved with some acequia stuff from Poaque, which is where I'm from. And I met Eric on an airplane. He sat next to me, and I was fascinated. Who knew Chicanos could become professors? And now you have people like Elena and me who are professors now, and it's because of things that you all did here in the 1970s. So what we're going to do today is I have several questions for Adelita, and I'm sort of going to ask them and step back and let her talk. And what we really wanted to do is allow folks to be in this Plática. This is not about just us. And so we want it to be a true community conversation. So like I said, a few questions, and then we'll open it up for the audience for questions and comments. How does that sound? Okay, so Adelita, do you remember what you were thinking when you took these photos? Were you trying to make art, or were you trying to document the Chicano movement?
Okay, well, the photos she's talking about are the ones that are here on the screen that were part of many of them were part of the exhibit there at the Hispanic Cultural Center for the last, 5 months, something like that. Anyway, when I was at the time that I took a lot of these photographs, I used to work with El Grito del Norte, which was a newspaper in northern New Mexico. Well, it was actually known internationally. And then I was also the editor of the Candle here at New Mexico Highlands University. And I had worked at El Gallo at the Crusade for Justice. So one of my jobs was always to take the camera and go and photograph everything that was going on, the marches, the sit-ins, whatever was going on as part of the Chicano movement. But I also learned that when you take a photograph, you don't just shoot it, you kind of frame it. And it's always with the intention of showing it somewhere, either publishing it in a magazine, a newsletter, or an exhibit, or whatever. So it was both. It was both to document the event that's taking place with the idea of showing it somewhere. Who would know that 50 years later it would be part of an exhibit, it's part of a national catalog, and now we're sharing it with you here.
Yeah, and so the catalog was published as a result of the exhibit, and it's published through University of New Mexico Press, so you could look online for that. It's really beautiful. So Adelita, how did you become one of the central players in creating and running the Escuelita?
Okay, by the time we got to the escuela, and something that Myrriah points out in her article is that a lot of the movimiento that took place here in Las Vegas was around education. New Mexico Highlands University, the whole protest here started because the Donnelly, the old president, had retired, and they were looking for a new president to replace him. And the people's candidate was Dr. John Aragon, and the university decided to bring somebody from Wisconsin, and so people were up in arms, well, not up in arms literally, but they were, and so I became part of that movement, and I wanted to share a little anecdote, because at the time I had an apartment on the plaza, no? Where La Casa de Música, it used to be, that was my apartment. And at the time, I had my son who is here, Miguel Medina, stand up so that people can see. He was a little baby of 6 months old, and sometimes I would have him here, because I was a student at Highlands, and sometimes my sister, stand up, Mary Alice, and my mother would babysit for him in Española so that I would have. But anyway, on that particular day, I'm lying down in my sofa, and I hear this shouting and chanting outside on the plaza, and I look out the blinds, and I see all these people chanting and walking, and I happen to see my older brother, Benji, and his best friend, Fred Trujillo. And I said, what's going on? So I put on my shoes, I ran out there, and I said, what's going on? And they told me, oh, we're marching against this president that they're bringing from Wisconsin and there's discrimination at the university, and in like about 5 minutes, they convinced me to join them. So, and that actually changed my life forever, that little, march and rally, and so that was like in 1970. So then I became involved in the movimiento here, and then, and like we said, it was all around education. Then, I think after I had already left the university, some students from East Las Vegas who had been inspired by the movimiento here at Highlands decided that they were being discriminated against, that they were not being taught their history. in the East Las Vegas schools, and they now were looking for a superintendent. And the people's candidate was Dr. Juanita Montoya, but they brought somebody from where?
Wisconsin.
One of them was from Wisconsin, anyway. So the students did something similar, and it was, you see photographs here, they were the middle school students had a walkout to protest this, what was going on. And then the high school students, so it was a combination. And by then, David, I think we had formed, and after we all left Highlands, some of us dropped out and some of us graduated. I didn't graduate at the time, but we became kind of like their mentors, and we tried to work with the schools in East Las Vegas who refused to take. Somebody had done a study about the dropout rates, about all this other stuff, and they showed it to the school board, and they didn't budge. So the students walked out and did something similar. And then after, I don't know how long of trying to negotiate with them and trying to get them to provide a meaningful curriculum, and they weren't budging, we decided that we were going to form our own school. So, we formed Chicanos Unidos para Justicia, right? And that was, this was the early, that must have been like 72, 73 when we formed it. And around that time, the properties in Montezuma were being emptied. They were closing the seminary down. They were now going to educate seminarians back in Mexico. And so I don't know whose idea it was. Fred at the time worked for the seminary. He worked for the seminarians there. And he must have said, there's this wonderful property that's going to be empty. And why don't we try to get it to form our own school? So we actually did. We tried to negotiate with the Archdiocese. It was Archbishop James Peter Davis at the time. I was very Catholic, so I know my Catholic history. and they wouldn't. They said no. And there was Montezuma's Unidos wanted to start like a veteran center, and we wanted to start the school. We wanted to do a farm. And I don't remember how long the negotiations went on back and forth. But I remember one particular day, we had a march in Old Town, and we even had a mass. And I remember I was telling somebody yesterday that I was wearing these hot pants that were popular in those days and marching with a standarte of the Virgen de Guadalupe. Which, thinking back, I thought, can you imagine? And we had a mass, and then after the mass, there were probably about 100 of us that marched all the way from the Old Town to the castle in Montezuma. And we had like a caravan of about 30 cars that followed us. And little did the town know, or little did anybody know, except for about 20 of us, that we were going to stay there that day. And we were not going to leave, right? So, so we did. We started the school. And I actually, David we actually developed a curriculum for the school. We did research, again, on the dropout rates, how the young kids were alienated from school, they were not going to school, and so forth. So we actually decided to, and we named the escuela after Padre Antonio Jose Martinez, who had been
The first educator.
Yeah, an educator.
In Towson, 1820.
Yes, and in addition, he brought one of the first printing presses to New Mexico, so he also was into journalism. But he was one of the first to educate girls and Native Americans, and I was always very impressed with that. So I remember putting forth the name, and everybody liked the idea of Padre Antonio Jose Martinez. So we actually had a board of directors and all of that stuff, and we actually got accredited by an alternative accreditation, I don't know what you call it, agency or whatever, association, yes, and so we did. And to answer Maria's question, I don't remember if David and I were appointed, elected to be the academic coordinator and the administrator of the school, I think by that time I had had like a lot of experience, organizing and stuff, and then I had worked with El Grito del Norte with one of the best mentors that I could ever have, Elizabeth Betita Martinez, and she was on our governing board. And so she was like very strict and very high standards and stuff, and she had taught us how to administer an office, the office of El Grito and the newspaper and all that stuff. So I kind of had that experience, but I don't remember, like I said, if we were voted in or we were self-appointed or what.
And it's funny how sometimes you remember like really mundane things and then things that somebody's gonna say, that's so important. It just happened like that, right? No, that's great, Adelita, thank you.
Can I interrupt
Of
just for
course.
1 second? I would like to ask the people who are involved in the Movimiento at Highlands University to stand up and raise your hand. Please. And now I would like those of you who were involved in establishing the Escuela Antonio José Martinez and helping the students at East Las Vegas with Chicanos Unidos para Justicia, stand up and raise your hands. And the students. I would like Pita Montoya to raise her hand. She's a young lady with a red. When you look at these photographs, she was the cook for the escuela. And you'll see a photograph in the kitchen in the castle. We took over the castle, and so we used it. And so there's a long table with free lunch. And then we also had a baking co-op out of the castle there in Montezuma. For the mothers of the students, they created a bakery and they would share bread among the families.
There it is.
Right on cue.
There it is.
I mean, this is, for me, when Adelita and I were visiting that day in the summer, when we got to the point, we were looking through newspapers, and when I got to that carta where the parents were writing, talking about the kids and the mothers from the community who were coming in to cook, I mean, to me, that is the most compelling piece of all of this in the way that the families were involved, right? And I think, you see all these little layerings of history. The Black Berets are who start the free food, what am I trying to say? The free school lunch, thank you, free school lunch program. And then you have the Escuelita continuing that. When the Brown Berets walked in today, this is continuation of all of that, right? To say that we still have Brown Berets on campus at NMHU today, this is because things just continue in this way, right? The cycles of that, so, yeah. So Adelita, when you think back to the Movimiento Chicano at Highlands and across in Las Vegas, city schools, etc., what stands out now most in your mind?
About Highlands, well, let's see, I have written down some notes. Oh yes, it was as a student at Highlands University that I ever witnessed racism. I had grown up in a very sheltered home with my grandparents, attended a Catholic school, very sheltered in Española, and I never experienced like overt racism or discrimination. I do remember, later on I remember the nuns, they were all white from Michigan, they were the Dominican sisters, and I remember one of them, actually the principal, Sister Winifred, asking me one time, are you like the rest of these dumb bunnies? And she was referring to the students who were Native American and Chicano. And I said, no, you know, but anyway, but I had never like, you know, my parents' employers were white doctors or, you know, and the priest was Father Burke, one of the best, you know, Irish people I have ever met in my whole life. But anyways, but I experienced it here at Highlands, and it was against a black student. And what happened was that there was a hamburger joint here where Steve Ledger had his musica thing. That used to be like a campus, right? Yes. And I was with my black boyfriend, my son's father, and I was like maybe like 17 or something like that. And we went to get a hamburger, and I was starving, and he was like 6'3", so he said, I'll go, and he was there like 15, 20 minutes, and I'm like in the back starving and with, you know, getting angry. So I went over there and I said, what the heck's going on? You know, we've been standing here like, and he said, they haven't called on me because I'm black. And he was like, definite. And I said, what? And that was the first time I ever witnessed racism. And after that, that's why I guess when the Chicano movement started to express that there had been a lot of racism here at Highlands over the decades and decades, and that there was I think there was maybe like 1 or 2 Chicano professors in the entire university, and there were no administrators, and Donnelly supposedly always said that they could never find any qualified Chicanos anywhere in the nation to come, or Latinos to come and teach at Highlands. So, and actually here at Highlands, there were several professors who were very overtly racist. And once, you know, you start learning about racism and discrimination, then your eyes kind of like open and you start seeing things that you hadn't seen before, which I had never seen before. And so, but there were also very great professors. Like I remember Dr. Jesse Query, who originally was Dr. Jesse Morris and then married Query. And then Dr. Fred West and Dr. Byron White and Harry Lippy, and there were some professors that really supported our movimiento, even though they didn't do it overtly, they were supporting. So that's not to say that every white professor here was racist, but that those who were very overtly racist. And so that's one of the things that I remember about the Highlands. But then, of course, the people that were inspired by the movimiento, I think Mary Lou Griego, I think Chris talks about the first time he saw her, she was protesting against the great boycott or the lettuce boycott at one of the Columbia school stores here, and he fell in love with her, was inspired by her. That story really got to me, because actually I didn't even know anything about the grapes or the lettuce or anything like that, but some of the students at Highlands did, you know. And then when we started the movimiento here at Highlands, we were called Spanish American Student Organization. Because all of our lives we had been taught that we were Spanish American, not, God forbid, Mexican, because, you know, there were all kinds of names that were called. So anyway, after like about the first year, people started going to other campuses and started getting their eyes open, politicized, and they decided to rename the organization Chicano Associated Student Organization. And one of the things about the Chicano was that it recognized our indigenous background. And that I had grown up being Spanish American, speaking Spanish at home, but I knew that my grandmother was part Navajo, but we just never celebrated her. We were Spanish American. So that's one of the things that the Chicano movement here at Highlands brought to the fore, was that we celebrated, you know, who we actually were in our history, our culture.
Yeah, that transition from Spanish American to Chicano Association here at Highlands, I think, was a really instrumental moment, right? And, you know, to speak to the side of the early Knox, the first Knox conference that was here, I mean, everybody knew that Highlands was center of the movement here in New Mexico, right? So, yeah, there's so much more to say about that, I think. So, how did your involvement in the Movimiento Chicano affect your evolution as an artist?
Let's see. Well, part of it was, I had a double major here at Highlands. I was a major in English and a major in art. And ever since I was a little girl, I used to like to draw. And I drew with colored pencils, you know. And when I came here, I didn't know what to major in, you know, so I knew I wanted to major in English because, believe it or not, I wanted to get rid of my Spanish accent because everybody made fun of the way we spoke. And I wanted to learn proper English and so forth. But art, anyway, I started getting, a friend of mine, Kathy Lucero, used to teach me about perspective and chiaroscuro and all this stuff. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to take some classes in art. So I decided all of the professors here were white professors, and I liked all of them except for one, who was the head of the art department, Elmer Schooley. I had A's and B's in drawing, ceramics, jewelry, oil painting, everything. I had A's and B's. Schooling never gave me better than a C. And I took 3 classes. I took 3 art history classes and 1 design. He didn't like me and I didn't like him. but everybody, but to go back about how my art evolved, because all of our art history, the majority of our art history classes were about European art. I think they had a few slides on Diego Rivera, a few slides on, you know, Roscoe and stuff like that, maybe, but most of it was European art. But I guess the idea of my recognizing my indigenous roots kind of opened my eyes about some of the things that I wanted to paint and draw and stuff like that. And of course, Nuevo Mexico is one of the most beautiful states in the country, so that's very inspirational. I've done paintings of the Rio Grande, I've done paintings of the montañas, the red cliffs in ABQ and all of that stuff, but I've also done a lot of Chicano with indigenous roots paintings and so forth. And I was not one of the students that did the murals, because by that time I was more into journalism. But I know Pedro Rodriguez, who was a professor here later on and head of the Chicano Studies program, he inspired a lot of the students to do the murals and actually took them to Mexico to see the great muralists and stuff like that.
Yeah, when I interviewed Francisco Lefebvre for the article, you know, Pedro Rodriguez was a big, you know, sort of a central part of thinking about the exhibit. And those of you who knew him or know of him or were his student, you know, he seems to have been very transformational in the lives of the artists in the exhibit. So in one way or another, and that's what Francisco talked about too. So I think what we'll do at this point is sort of transition to hearing from some of you or having some of you dialogue with Adelita and me, if I can jump in, where I can jump in. But we'll open the floor at this point.
I was wondering, how long did the school stay open?
Actually, I think it only stayed open for about 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years, because it was really expensive to run. I mean, we actually got several grants from different churches and donations and stuff like that. But David, do you remember that was the one of the main reasons was that we
Yeah, primarily that was the only reason that we couldn't continue because of the funds. But there was the last part of the school. We went from Moctezuma to West Las Vegas in a facility there that they helped us get. So we were there for, I can't remember if it was maybe 6-9 months maybe or so. So that was,
Yeah, so was it? I recognize you now, Felicia. It's interesting because I've been trying to look through these documents through them. I think David has probably more information than what I've been able to find, right? But to even think that this school existed 2 years doesn't seem like a lot, but especially at that time. And if you read in the article, some of it had to do with being able to have accreditation, right? And so there was an alternative accreditation, and then there was a fight with the state about what would count toward accreditation. So part of it was that, part of it was funding, at least it seems to me, like from the outsider perspective. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
My name is Bernadette Fernandez, and like Adelita, and congratulations to everybody who's here who made it this far. I was also a Highland student and had a double major also, behavioral sciences, psychology, and dramatic arts. And I was sitting, and there's a photo in one of the annuals of a takeover of this university here, the office, the administration, and you can see Doug McDougall and myself and a few others sitting there at the desk of the president, and we were quite successful anyway. And I'm grateful to everybody here who's wanting to consider the continuation of multi races and multi backgrounds, that everybody here, all the way from being born in Las Vegas, New Mexico, to Canada and everywhere else in the world. Thank you all for being here and supporting such a great cause, and for you all to be making it happen.
What were your demands when you took over the administrative office?
We wanted some, in those days, the transparency word wasn't common, but that's what we wanted. We wanted to see why and how the selection process of the president occurred. We just needed more information. That's what we wanted. It wasn't being given to us. We weren't being communicated with at the time. And so that was the main justice, the just of overtaking the offices, just to get attention and to bring awareness to the fact that fairness was not being seen by most of the campus, I would say, and even most of the teachers knew about the injustices here and some racism. And I'm so happy to see that that's changing in so many ways in so many places. And we need to know, though, that there are still some locations where there's possibly black and brown, I would say, populations that are having Superfund sites being foisted upon that. And what that is environmental injustice. And so that still occurs. It's a great big fight that we have ahead of us, all of us, because we're all on the same planet. And so that's one thing that I think we should be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention part of the legacy of the movement here at Highlands is again recognizing that the movement wasn't just about civil rights and representation. It was a cultural revitalization, an identity formation, a strength of having self-pride and self-identity and such. And it shows up particularly in the art and in the cultural activities as well, because we think there was takeovers, there was administrative shifts, etc. But the movement was based on that sense of knowing yourself and knowing others that believed in you. 1974, the first Chicano literature conference across the nation held here at Highlands. I'm a product of the 70s movements in Colorado, and there was carryover. This is the legacy of Highlands, is that we knew about you. We emulated you. We carried on some of the traditions that were already established here and went on, and it formed into other different kinds of student organizations, such as UMAS and MECHA, which were different, which were embryonic and young at the time. But there's a history and a legacy and a memory of Highlands in a big manner. And again, so part of the imagery and the art products are reminders of what had taken place. So again, thank you to the champions that went before us and left that big legacy. My appreciation.
Thank you, Eric. And I hope in a second Mary Lou might say something about Mecha and how that continued outside, Robertson, etc. Mr. Montoya.
That's what I wanted to touch on that subject, because after the struggle in East Las Vegas, things changed. But of course, we had left. We were up in Montezuma at that time. But Chris, maybe you can explain what were the changes that you saw after that struggle that we were involved in at the school.
Well, ironically, I was at West Las Vegas. I spent 16 years with my beloved West Las Vegas. You know, I always say West me dio corazón. When I went to Las Vegas City Schools to Robertson High School, um, I had always had a stereotype from the time I got here of Las Vegas City Schools because it was them and us, East and West, Chicanos, predominantly Anglos. When I got to the city schools, I was amazed because, like I say, West gave me corazon. City schools gave me organization. And the organization they got was symbiotic because at the time it was at least 50-50 Anglo, Hispano, Chicano. And the positions that these folks were striving for were being filled now by a equal representation, so to speak. The school board wasn't 100% Anglo. Now it was a mixture of folks. The administrative offices weren't 100% Anglo. It was administrators. So the progress, the seed that these folks planted, we were able to reap and contribute to city schools as well as to my our West Las Vegas. So yes, you know, when thanks are given, we have to remember that the young folks also had a big interest in it. And with that, if I could just make a short statement on the first administrative takeover, um, two things need to be clarified and remembered. One, listen to this. We were the only nonviolent student takeover of any university in the United States of America. We prophesized Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, in their peacefulness in going about it. We occupied the building for several weeks, slept in the buildings, were threatened with National Guard, but the peacefulness of it never went away. We did have backroom conferences because we were in collaboration with Techmatoa, the Indians, with OCBS, Organization of Concerned Black Students, and a radical contemporary movement at the time, Students for a Democratic Society. Burn, baby, burn. We could not let Highlands burn because our antepasados' records of their accomplishments were in that building. Had those records been destroyed, their credentials could not have been recreated. So no, peaceful. As significant, the movement at Highlands University secured the presidency of the first Chicano president of any state institution in the United States of America, Highlands University. Dr. Adams. Let it be known that Las Vegas, New Mexico, and Highlands University was known as the Ombligo de Aztlán. The Ombligo of Aztlán, the umbilical, the lifeline of the movement. Highlands University, right here. Thank you.
Coming back a little bit to the struggle in the Las Vegas school systems. What the school board at that time, they took us to federal court. They sued us for $160,000 to intimidate us. That's what they were doing. But think about the future. I mean, now, who does that now? Who's doing that? Who sues anybody who stands up against him? So we had a little bit of a taste of that.
Yeah, you know, I think it's so interesting because when we did a panel event in Albuquerque, Mr. Montoya, you were there, Seymour was there. And it's weird to be having this conversation and not contextualize it with what's happening right now, right? And what's happening to Latinos right now, immigrants right now in this country. And over the weekend, I knew my nephew had been in the walkout. He's a junior in high school. He had been involved in the walkout up north a few weeks ago. I didn't realize that the sign he was carrying and a picture of him holding that sign made it to the newspaper. And I told him, I am so proud of you, Hito, because, and they're emulating it based on what, right? It's all cyclical. So yeah, yes.
4 years old, 5 years old in the school, I just wanted to say that one of the things that I learned most was pride in being a Chicano. And it was the handshake, Chicano handshake, the fist in the air. The curriculum we learned was not our forefathers like George Washington, it was Zapata, it was Pancho Villa, it was the people around us, David. These were men, these were women that fought for something that I'm proud of, that I was raised around. It was radical. I mean, there was times when my mama, I can't believe you did that. We went into one of the post offices and ripped down the American flag because that's how radicalized we were as kids. Because at the time we were dealing with the Vietnam War, and I'm a veteran now, but at the time there was a lot of struggle going on in this country, early 70s, and people were making a stand against the establishment, and to grow up in that environment. At me, I mean, as a little kid, I mean, there's pictures of all of us there, my cousin Georgie, like just we were there. We were sitting in these meetings, bored to death sometimes. There was one time when I was running around in Denver, and this woman grabs me and, hey, settle down, and sits me in her lap and holds me. And it was Angela Davis. So these are the people that I was exposed to as a child, and it's not till later on as a man you look back on your life and you say, this is what molded you. And to see these people that are still here, that are still fighting, and their entire lives have fought for what they've passed on to the younger generation, which, in my opinion, is it's scary because we're losing our culture to a lot of this, stuff that's going on, as far as our country, where it's leading to. A lot of these young Chicanos, they don't have that that pride that we do. We grew up, and that's one of the things that I see I've been a teacher, is that who you are. You have to know who you are, where you're from, and be proud of it. I think a lot of times now that they're pushing us away from our tradition, and we're going to these other subcultures, and not being proud of exactly who we are, where we're from. And that's one thing that the people in here that I was a part of that helped me. They always make sure that you are proud of who you are, regardless of your color of your skin or the texture of your hair. It was always Miguelito, and I was always uplifted. So,
I'm all choked up now. Uh, yeah, I think that's one of the things that I said that I've always tried to promote, that if you don't know who you are and you're not proud of who you are, like for the longest time, we didn't want to be Mexican because uh, Mexicans during when New Mexico was trying to become a state, there were the New York Times, the Atlantic, all of these Eastern members of the press. They always said that Mexicans and Indians were among the worst of the worst. I mean, they were horrible racist things that were written about the people in New Mexico, and that was us. So as a result, people started moving away from being proud of being Mexicano and being proud, and wanting to be Spanish, because it was, we were always taught to be that we were either less than or not as good as. And that really puts a hole in who you are, that makes you not want to be that. And I remember when I was in high school, there was one teacher that said they had done a survey in northern New Mexico and asked people, what are you, Spanish or Mexican? And Spanish, the majority Spanish. And then they would ask them the same question, ¿Qué es usted, español o mexicano? Mexicano. But the word Mexican had taken on that connotation, And so I've always believed, like my son just expressed very beautifully, that you have to be proud of who you are. Because if you don't know who you are and you're not proud, you're lost, and you're wanting to be something else and somebody else, and then you adopt this culture and that culture, and that's not good. That's not positive.
Adelita, going to what you just talked about, here in those times, if you go to a restaurant, it would be a Spanish restaurant. Well, I've been to Spain. There is a taco that exists in Spain.
Yeah. There's my favorite Sabino Livari quote where he says, "If you don't know where you came from, how in the heck are you gonna know where you're at or where you're going?" Right. So Dr. Romero, and then Mr. Maestas.
And then please take some magazines, please sign up for our newsletter, please subscribe to El Palacio if you're interested in more of this kind of history. Myrriah is actually working on her next article for me about the Downwinders. So you definitely want to subscribe so you can keep getting all this good history.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Can I just one more thing? There's a group of us that meet every so often. You've probably seen us. We're at the corners. We're at the corner of Mills and 7th, between Walgreens and McDonald's.
For coming here and bringing all these people together, because I was there, you Adelita, you David, way back then. I was an angry young man, because when I was 6 years old at Catholic school, I was speaking Spanish with all my plebe, and they caught me, and they took me out to the front of the classroom, and they cracked my hands with an oak yardstick, and it cut me. And I'm sitting here with the blood, and I'm going like this, and I'm saying, "I declare war on the gringo American educational system." That's how I started. Still at it, but there's not a whole lot of followers. There's just me. I don't want followers. I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. But I'm remembering back, and with Adelita's words, that softness that Mary Lou brought to the movement, and all the Chicanas, all the women in our group, Bernadette, that softened us up, because my anger was so bad, they kicked me out of Highlands University. They kicked me out. Well, I did have some marijuana, but I only had a half an ounce. And that was a felony.
And he tried to hide it in the back of a toilet tank. I heard that story.
The narco, the state narco, he put his gun to my head, and I'm throwing it in the toilet, and I'm flushing it down, and he ended up breaking his finger getting it out. Little payback there. But the dean of students, let's see, Crispino, you would remember him, Ray Farmer. Ray Farmer. He said, "You're out of here." No, you remember, he's the friend of the students, and he's this and that. He kicked my ass out right away. There was nothing, there was no help. And so I had to deal with that. I was blackballed from any university. So I said, the only way I was going to get out of this is to hire a lawyer and basically to go to a university. And so College of Santa Fe, the brother school, and I went to St. Mike's, and they spared me. They said, "Oh, we'll let this guy in. Yeah, maybe he is arrested for a felony, but we're going to let him into our school." And so I made it through, and I did okay. I got on the dean's list and everything. And then I came right back over here because everything that was going on. And so I snuck out because I was on probation. I snuck out and I came, and I watched the whole thing come down in spring of 1970. And I just happened to be there in the front, and I'm watching these guys with baseball bats on one side of Donnelly, on the Donnelly Library side, and I'm looking on the other side, and there's all my bros with
with golf clubs. And they're like, one back. And then finally the professors came. God, what were their names? One was a math professor, Willie Sanchez, and others. And they came in between in the road and they said, and most of the guys with the baseball bats were football players, white football players, baseball players, so on and so on. And they were all lined up and they were going to come and attack us. And these professors lined up in the front and said, "There, aren't you in my such and such class, lit class, and whatever? You might not be eligible anymore to play sports. You might not." And they all just dispersed. It was incredible. It was incredible. That's the whole thing, is that I got softened up by Mary Lou, Adelita, because, you know, they were saying, you know, you can't be angry. You can't be violent. You know, and I was hanging out with Juan Jose Peña and Pate, remember Pate? He just came back from Vietnam and he had his gun ready anytime, you know. It was pretty crazy. And so trying to keep the peace, and then who is the Chicano of them all, right? Who is the best Chicano, or and there was a little bit of infighting going on too, you know, and that didn't help us at all. But the women, they could come in and they'd soften us up, and I know I got softened, you know, and so the thing is that from all of this, I came back. I was an archivist at the archives. I got into history, and I got into genealogy. And so that's what I was doing. I was building the movement through genealogy and history and pride and all of that. And I was doing it in the high school in Santa Fe, and then I came back, and then I started doing it in the university. And so when the first Chicano studies, Native American studies, Black studies, and other studies, women's studies eventually came, I was in the core of that, because it was the ethnic studies department that was founded, and that came out of all of that. And then you see Antonio Jose Martinez. I did my master's thesis. I came back and did my master's thesis on his life. And so it's interesting. Then I wrote for Voces del Pueblo, and I was writing several series of articles on Antonio Jose Martinez and all of that. But to just kind of close, it's interesting how, you know, we're here now. It's unbelievable to me that we're all still here talking about it, because I never thought that day would happen. Last year, I came and I did a presentation of the history of the ethnic studies departments. And, you know, because I taught Chicano studies here at Highlands, and I taught Native American studies back in 74, 75. And then we ran out of money from the Title III grant, and I had to go north to Denver, because Anselmo Ariano, Dr. Anselmo Ariano, he and I, we were classmates for our master's degree, and then we were co-directors of the ethnic studies programs. And we did all the research for Native American, Black, and Chicano studies. We were the base for it all, and we built a base, and we had a rare room here. Any of you remember the rare room? A little closet. It was a closet, but we had it packed with stuff, and people would go and research in it. So now here we are with Dr. Romero, Dr. Eric Romero, and that continues. It's still here. It's amazing that it's still here, really, because I thought it was going to go down, and it did. The funding finally went away. It disappeared, and little by little, each group would bring it back. You know, and bring it back, and it continued until now. So.
So I think at this point, we're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna say one quick thing, and then I'm gonna let Adelita have the last. Go ahead, Eric.
Can we have Mary Lou talk about Mecha?
Yes. I asked her, and then I forgot. So if she wants.
Mitcha the Robertson. When you're a child and your parents are migrants in the summertime and you travel Texas, Colorado, everywhere with your parents, and you of course feel the discrimination, you feel the poverty, you feel it's hard. And so I just, we did our thing. We finally settled here in Las Vegas when I was in third grade, and went to school here at Robertson at the East Schools through 12th grade. Went to Highlands, and I was very involved with the founding of SASO, and then we changed to CASO. We founded that program at the organization at Highlands because of what you've already heard. The president, we were looking for a president, and they couldn't tell us that there was no president, no men, or no Chicano that was qualified. There was plenty of Chicanos that were qualified in the country. So it started there, and we went through all that whole thing with the demonstrations and the movimiento, and it was absolutely enlightening. It was satisfying, and you felt that you contributed and you knew who you were. So when I got my degree at Highlands, I went on to teach in different schools, West, Pecos, and then I landed up at Robertson. And I saw a lack of the students not knowing who they were and how important they were to everybody, and not knowing their history because it's not in the textbooks. And since they didn't know their history, I kept thinking we got to do something. And so I asked for permission to start a mecha that my son came from UNM and helped us get started. But I had to ask because we had a Spanish American for a principal at the time. And I knew that he was going to be against Mecha and so forth. So I just figured out a way to work it in. And, there was a conference that was going to be at UNM that fall. There was going to be a conference. Mecha was putting on a conference, and they had invited me to take some students. And I thought, how am I going to do that? They're not going to let me. But what I did was I says, well, we were really trying to get the bilingual programs going in the schools, right? So I says, well, we've been invited to attend. They asked me to take some students. It's going to deal with language and bilingual and all this. And, we need that. And we can show that we're really up on what's happening in the schools, and we can prove that we're going to do bilingual education. And he says, yeah, that's a really great idea, he told me. And so he let me take about, I don't remember if it was like 12 students. And it was one conference. We came back, and all I heard on the way back on the bus was, we need to start one at Robertson High School. We need to start one. And I'm going, okay, let's see, So we got it going. And my husband, Cristino, was a co-sponsor with me. And we got it going, and it was more of a history than anything else. We would meet once a week at night in the library. And the thing is that most kids don't want to go have a meeting every week. They don't attend. Well, they attended. And it went from 12 kids to 25 by the time we finished, we did it for 10 years. And by the time we finished, we had gone through about 1,000 students. And we taught history, we taught pride, we taught traditions, we taught carnalismo. This is one of my students. This is one of my mechistas right here, and she's gone on and done fabulous things. But they started to learn, and they were so proud of each other. They were so proud of what they were learning. And we had retreats. We did every week. We had meetings. We did abuelito projects that Dr. Romero helped us write a grant, and we had monies to do an abuelito project. It just turned into really something really huge, and we did it for 10 years. And I think we would have gone on doing it. I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. I loved it. We involved the community people, artists, and everything. And it would have gone on, but at that time, my mother was suffering from Alzheimer's, and we were taking care of her in our home, and it was just getting to be really hard. So I had to drop it, and there was no one that was willing to pick it up. And so it died.
One of the things that David needs to know, I was talking about the progression of city schools. Mecha was nominated by someone for the student group of the year in New Mexico and won. They were nominated for student group of the region, lo que es Texas, Arizona, Colorado, and Nuevo Mexico, and won the best student organization in the tri-state area. When we came back, because Mecha had not been recognized by the school board, when we came back and told them, look what your students have done, they wouldn't accept the School Board Association's student group of the year for 3 states. So sometimes we move forward and sometimes we get kicked in the north end, yeah. But then that was 8 years ago. So,
8? It's been a little
well,
longer. Time flies when you're having fun.
when you're 88, you're right.
That's true, and I forgot that part, that we were not ever accepted at Robertson High School. By, the majority of the teachers were just fine, but they still, a lot of them just didn't allow their kids to be in it. And it's really strange how that can be, but especially, like he says, the school board, they never recognized Mecha, and they were fabulous. These kids were just great. And like I say, Felisa Ortiz here was one of hundreds and hundreds of them. And I think you learned a lot, didn't you?
Changed my life.
You know that Felicia, we have to know this, is from a little place over here, just above Rosiada. She was a school kid at Mateo in Sapeo. She went on, got her degree from here, ultimately went to Las Vegas, Nevada, says, I want to run for something. So she ran for the state school board, which administers
And she won.
the K through university, the K through university education system. And not only did she win, she was ultimately the president of the school board for the state of Las Vegas, of Nevada. Ultimately went on to do her own thing, became very successful, has come back to Highlands and sitting on several little boards. Our little mocosita over here makes sure. Incidentally, Miguel Arjito also was a very proud member of our Machista program as well, you know, so we.
One more, if you could address it now. Many of you have been recognized for commencement exercises. A lot of groups are wearing sashes of self-identity and such. They had proposed at one time and it was turned down at the administrative level, but do you know what they did? Chale, adelante. They did it anyway.
I remember when I was getting ready to graduate from Highlands, 2007, I graduated, and I remember when Daniel Martinez came to me one afternoon and handed me my sash, my purple sash, right? And when I started writing this article, my primo, who was one of your mechistas, my grandpa was from La Liendra. I still have a lot of family here in Vegas, including my sister who lives here. And my cousin tells me, you need to go talk to Mary Lee. Mecha was the best. It changed my life. So we will have that conversation later. I'm going to take one more comment right here, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I just have a few words. My name is Molly Smollett. I consider myself a radical from New York City. I've been here 30 years, so I don't know if I'm still an outsider, but I think I'm an insider. I want to thank Nacho Jaramillo, a dear friend of mine, who gave me a lot of this history, and I wish he would stand up. Oh, there he is. But what I did have the privilege of being in Las Vegas teaching. I'm really a filmmaker. I'm not a real teacher, but I inspired students to come to the plaza and interview people. And I also taught debating. And what I urge you all to the activists of the movement to go into the high schools and bring this history to them, which I think is really, really necessary. Last point, the resistance still goes on. My next move is to try to bring consciousness of what's going inside what I call the concentration camps of what ICE is doing to people, mostly people of brown color. And I wish you would bring that wherever you are, and I will be organizing something in the near future on this, okay? Thanks.
Mr. Mayes, oh, go ahead, Adelita.
No, I was,
Mr. Maestas, did you have a comment? I forgot I called you earlier.
As quickly as possible. I just wanted to say in 1972, I got released from the army in Grenia. I call him Grenia David. We grew up together on 8th Street. He approached me and he said, there's people trying to sabotage our school that up in Montezuma. And he said, necesito vaque. So he had me play guard at night at Montezuma.
So you realize we're going to be contacting you for the expanded version of this. I'm recruiting my friend and colleague, Dr. Elena Valdez, who works here at Highlands. She's faculty, part-time faculty. What's your title? You're not. It doesn't matter. I forget the name of the center. Sorry, Elena.
Director, Center for the Education and Study of Diverse Populations.
There you go. Thank you, Dr. Romero. Anyway, we're going to be contacting all of you. I also want to recognize another Highlands professor who was my fellow student here at Highlands. He was a master's student when I was an undergrad. Dr. Ben Villarreal, who's there in the back, and his baby Sol, who was with him a minute ago, because Ben lived through the 2000s version of this, right? And I think that, you know, we could stay here for hours, and I think a lot of us would, but no tenemos comida, so next time we're gonna organize the comida. And I want to thank one last time the Donnelly Library staff, especially Nicole, especially Josephine, who's here, and Michaela for recording. I also want to remember there's 2 media arts students. You'll have to take turns to record if anybody wants to record. While we're here, it might be a good time to do this. I hope we don't get kicked out of the library because I think people are going to want to mingle. And lastly, Emily, thank you for allowing me and inviting me to write this story. Like, it's just an honor to be able to tell your all stories. I think we do need to continue that, right? We do need to continue with this history. We have so many educators in the Las Vegas school system now. My sister is one of them, who are working to do events. Dr. Romero, Dr. Valdez, and I will be here at Highlands on Tuesday doing an event for NEREC. And so I think that there's plenty to say, right? There's plenty to say. There's so much story and history to tell. Thank you all for sharing your stories with us. After Adelita gives closing, I wonder if the Brown Berets will lead us in a Viva Las Vegas, Viva NMHU, Viva Atzman.
I just want to, in closing, I just want to thank everybody who showed, everybody that I hadn't seen in ages, everybody who was from the old times, all the young people. I want to thank everybody. But I just want to say something personal about myself. When I said earlier that day that I walked out and saw that protest in the plaza, that it changed my life, it truly did. I've never been the same person ever since. I went and I lived in New York City for 25 years, and I worked with the Center for Constitutional Rights, with the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund. I joined the movement for Puerto Rican independence. I worked for the Miss Foundation for Women. I worked for the Sister Fund. When my son joined the military and was sent off to Iraq, I joined the Military Family Support Network and led the New York City chapter, and later became the executive director of the national organization in Washington, D.C., and we defended the rights of veterans. I am now working with Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, which is a national organization for farm worker women. So I have never stopped fighting in unwanted.
Hello. So we're gonna do something real quick. David Lucero, President of Mecha, part of La Hermandad Brown Berets. We're gonna do what's called a unity clap. So the way it's gonna go is we're gonna start kind of clapping real slow, then we're gonna get faster, and I'm gonna add the Mecha part of the who at the end. So if you guys want to join me, feel free. Let's start.
Que viva Las Vegas.
Que viva Las Vegas.
Woohoo!
Gracias.
There's some in the table.